Hey! So I just had a full day of Google camping in OKC. Shout out to West Fryer and Cassidy for providing the venue. It was fantastic learning. And then I came home, and because it turned out to be such a beautiful day, I decided to do some yard work. And so after yard work, what do? You record a video reflection about the lesson study you did about grammar. I thought that's the perfect time, and outside where it's just so nice right now, in the twilight. I guess this is the twilight. Anyways, earlier this week I did a really fun grammar lesson study with 8th graders at one of our middle schools in Mustang. Shout out to Mrs. Simmons for giving me that opportunity. Her students were fantastic. It was such a great opportunity, and it was on Halloween day. Yeah, the 31st. So Halloween. None of the students dressed up, so that was probably a good thing. But my goal setting out for the grammar is to teach students grammar without using worksheets, and teach grammar not in isolation but integrated into reading and writing processes. So it would bundle together very nicely Oklahoma standards for ELA 3, 5, and 7. And of course I had to also integrate zombies into it. So I have the lesson. Let me type it up here. bit.ly Zombies Write Boring Sentences. This is the most revised edition of the lesson that I have changed significantly after feedback that I received from students and reflecting on how it went with students together. Yes, Stark. And you want to tell them about it?
You tell.
All right, Stark has a new toy.
Like an excavator.
Yes, it's an excavator. So anyway, I wrote this standard based on the following 5. Focused on these standards. Of course, other literacy skills were integrated, but I created learning targets based off of those, and of course, standards-based proficiencies based off of those learning targets. I was inspired by the work done by Oklahoma teachers with our Oklahoma State Department of Education. Shout out to Danny, Amber, Sharon, and of course, Kelly Angley, for putting the frameworks together. But I looked at those proficiencies and I decided to create proficiencies of my own for 8th grade on how to gauge a student's writing. Of course, it's just first draft writing, and it's intended that after teaching these grammar concepts, they would revise and turn in more polished drafts, and their score would increase each time. So, that being said, in this lesson, I forego the worksheet and skill drill kill part of grammar, and we look at how grammar works. You can read more about it in my research narrative that I wrote after the lesson happened. But we look at grammar as it is in this excerpt from The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which is very simple sentence structure, and I wanted to see what students noticed and wondered about it. And so we talked about the sentence structure and what they noticed, and why Cormac chose this format. And a couple of them even recalled in their feedback. I got pulled out. There's some of the comments they left about their responses. I had them put their responses, pair up, talk about it, and then write short responses on sticky notes on why he chose this short sentence structure and what they noticed about it. And some of their what they identified was very deep, and I thought was very motivating, and I'm saving this so I can use it again with students. But that was all to then also play around with sentence structures, different sentence structures in sentence strip cards, which I have linked on here. It's a trick I actually picked up from Oklahoma Writing Project, where I just gave them these sentence strips and had them, much like you would with Legos, move strips around and see how the strips can function as you switch them around. And I had them rewrite the final sentence that they chose, in their writing journals. As that was the main focus, is that I wanted to promote taking class notes over worksheets. And we know from visible learning that taking class notes has an effect size of 0.59, and the target is 0.40. So that's an excellent effect size. But the true value, according to Fisher, Frey, and Hattie, is more apparent when you consider how studying one's notes aids in deepening knowledge and organizing and transferring information later. And so I wanted to focus on that organization and transferring of information from their notes. So they used the notes that they took about these sentence structures, and I gave them definitions, and we kind of dissected those definitions of three particular eloquent structures, as you can see here: the participle, the infinitive, and adverb clause, and what that is. And my intent was to have them recreate eloquent sentences using at least one of those. They could try all three, they could try one, but I wanted them to practice it in their own writing and write some sort of descriptive narrative. I tried both. I tried the descriptive narrative with one class. I tried having another class use Adobe Spark to just write one eloquent sentence based on a graphic from Adobe Spark. And both had their pros and cons. Of course, technology, it was the first time with Adobe Spark, so there was time issue with that, and then there was a time issue when I had them try to write one descriptive paragraph using that. They needed more time for both, more time to play around with Adobe Spark, and then more time to actually get their thoughts on paper. So as always, I am learning how time is my constant nemesis, as you know from being a classroom teacher. And so things that I would do differently for next time. One, I am really bad at making short lessons, obviously. I need at least 2 to 3 days for a lesson like this to do it really well, to really explore the essential question, to have them really understand the learning targets and the expectations. I think it would have been a little bit better if I had given them access to this document, since we had Chromebooks anyways in the room that day, had them open this from the get-go and use this as I would for professional development with adults, have them navigate through this document to each aspect that we played around with while learning. That would have been one thing I think would have been helpful, and that they would also learn how to use Google Docs in a really different way, as a hyperdoc of sorts. And I think the other would be more direct instruction, which, yes, so direct instruction has an effect size of 0.59, and even though that most people, I think it can be misinterpreted that formal direct instruction can be not as engaging as other forms of instruction, and it can be shallow. I think that they make a good point in visible learning that it should not be used as a sole means for teaching, especially reading and writings, but it is efficient if you want to get across like a main concept. So if I did more direct instruction on those eloquent structures, they would have had, I think, an easier time coming up with their own ideas and how to incorporate it in their writing. So direct instruction in order to get into deeper writing would have been a good transition to help that note-taking. And I wanted them to use their notes that they took over participles, infinitives, and adverbs, constantly refer back to them so they remember what the structure was and then implement that in a meaningful way in their writing, ideally. So one of the things that I adjusted on this lesson plan that I think will help others is this idea that we should create either a small group or as a whole class examples of participles using the structure presented by the sentence strips. So in here I took apart the sentence strips. These are parts of the sentence strips that I have listed out. The students run from gurgling and sloshing zombies. That's not every aspect of the sentence strips, but that's one aspect. And so I would have them throw up just as a whole group or maybe in pairs, throw up 2 other participles that would work to describe zombies. But they have to be verbs, right? Same way with infinitives. Really dissect that structure of an infinitive clause and come up with some other examples of infinitive clauses. This is the example from the sentence strips: to leave the townspeople homeless. As well as go over subordinating conjunctions. What is the structure in that? And we know that we have a subordinating conjunction. Here's lots of examples, and I would probably just give it to them and then have them see that the formula is to add a clause to that. So that would have been, I think, better to have them brainstorm with low risk examples that they would take notes with and write in their notebooks, and then kind of build off that. Maybe use one of them, but I would try to challenge them to use something that wasn't already said in the whole group on the board. But at least we would have that up as a means to ignite their own ideas. So those are my thoughts. It was fantastic. I think overall the lesson plan is stronger. I would just need more days to actually teach it with fidelity. So that is my reflection for my second major lesson study at Mustang Public Schools. I love it there, and I hope that you get some use out of this. Feel free to steal it, and of course, go to File and what is it? Make a copy and edit it as you see fit. Hopefully, it's just as good as something you would find on Pinterest or Teachers Pay Teachers, except this is free. So, all right, Stark, you want to say bye?
Bye.
You want to sing Days of the Week song? I don't want to sing it. I like you singing it. Days of the Week. All right. Thank you.